The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Well, let's talk about the first debate over 2 nights. It's all in the books. I think just first off, is there any clear front runner that came out of either night of the debates?
I think in the first night you saw Elizabeth Warren shine. I think you saw Julian Castro shine. Both of them had very specific policies that they talked about. Elizabeth Warren is a policy wonk, which is what I love most about her, actually. And so I think you really saw her kind of in her element that night. I think Julian Castro really pushed people on immigration policy, and that was really important because having a candidate of color up there talking about immigration policies, which he's lived in Texas, is a really important part of this campaign. I think on the second night, you saw Kamala Harris really go for Joe Biden, and I thought it was pretty great. You know, she had a lot to prove in this debate. I think that, you know, people have really underestimated her when she is compared to people like Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. And so having her on the stage with them, able to debate directly with them, I think was a really important part of the campaign for her. And so seeing her be able to really kind of go head to head with the two of them was a really important experience. And having her talk about things that have directly impacted her as a black woman, as a person who has practiced law, all of these things I think is a really important piece of that campaign. And so I think she really shined.
What do you think, Alan, as far as who did well enough to stand out in your mind? I know you're not supporting any of the candidates.
No, it's a clown car of candidates running without a doubt. But first of all, I think the moderators did a very poor job because the debaters in both nights kept talking over each other, going long beyond their time, and it was not well moderated. I don't think at all on any of the parts of the moderators. And in terms of the candidates and the debaters themselves, I don't think Kamala Harris came off as good as you think. I don't think she did. All the polls that came out right afterwards showed that she didn't gain the traction that people who were supporting her had hoped they would, that she would. She did go after Biden in a big way. Swalwell went after Biden also by saying, you know, you got to pass that torch, like you said 32 years ago, a line that he stole from JFK. And I think that Biden was one of the big losers. I've said before, he's not getting the nomination. He's one of the big losers. He did look tired. I don't think I've ever seen a candidate on either side of the aisle in any debate ever start to get to a point of responding to a challenge and then stop and say, oh, my time is up. He did that about a couple of times, if I'm not, maybe 3 times, and it was a weird moment. I thought, what are you doing? I mean, most of them just went on and on. They say your time's up. They want to make their point.
That's what they should do. I mean, if the moderators aren't going to stop you, then I'd keep going too. If I've got limited time, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk and I'm going to use that time wisely to get my points across to the American people, especially when you're on a stage with 10 people.
I absolutely agree, and that's why it was so weird to see Biden turn around and voluntarily cut himself off. And he looked like he couldn't respond to some of those things. I mean, the idea that
and his answers were kind of all over the place when he did respond.
He was, so I think he was one of the big losers. Another big loser, I think, was Robert Francis Beto O'Rourke, because he was one of the losers for one of the reasons that most of them were losers. The candidates all looked desperate. The lower on the rung that they are, the more desperate they looked. And the more desperate they came across, the least credible they came across. Because they were so desperate, I want to be there, I want to be there, I want to get it. O'Rourke was started to answer a question on the first night, and de Blasio interrupted him immediately and started going, oh, you don't know what you're talking because I have done this in New York. It's like, well, New Yorkers hate de Blasio. I mean, if anybody on that stage would have no chance of getting anything besides Williamson, it would be de Blasio. I mean, he's from nowhere at all.
So along those lines, so you're giving me who you thought might have fumbled pretty well. You're not giving me a winner. You're giving me kind of the loser. So I want to get that real quick before we move on. I want to get if anybody fumbled on your, if you saw anybody fumble.
I actually agree with Alan on this. I think, Biden and Sanders were seen as the front runners coming into this. I think, again, the two women both nights were underestimated because you had Beto, you had all these people on the stage. I'm sorry, but the two women shined, and they outshined the men on the stage. And I think that's a really important factor here. I was reading, on average, the women, those in particular, Kamala and Warren, both got more time to talk than the men because they were talking about substantive policy and they were holding people on the stage around them accountable. And so that's a unique thing that I don't think you've seen in any debates in modern history, whether it's on the Republican side or the Democratic side. And so I think that's going to be a really unique thing is you have two very strong female candidates who are going to take people like Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden to task on the issues that they've worked on their entire lives because they're incredibly old.
Did any of the 20 candidates that you saw look like to you they'd be a formidable opponent to Donald Trump?
Yes. First, let me just say a lot of anger on the stage both nights, not coming across with any real humor. There weren't any light moments. I think a lot of mistake. These candidates don't know how to be lighthearted. And again, you can go back to people like Clinton we've talked about, and Reagan and John Kennedy, and people like that who knew how to be able to have an easygoing way in a debate. None of them really had that except for one, and I know you're going to completely disagree with this. And I wouldn't vote for any of them, but I thought that Tulsi Gabbard came across as the least desperate, the most poised, the most articulate of all two nights, all the candidates, and the fact that she corrected Ryan when he was saying that we went into war before to get Taliban. She said, no, it was Al-Qaeda. Yep. I know I signed up for it, other people signed up for it. And she came across, she served in the military and everything like that. She's young, she's attractive, she knows how to communicate well. And again, it's not that you're not crazy about her, but she came across as, to me, of all 20 candidates, the most presidential. I would hate to see her run against Trump, and if I was a Democrat, I would probably be for her, thinking that she would have the greatest chance of being able to present that kind of front in order to be able to challenge him.
You know, I want to say, though, about the angry part. Yeah, they did come across as being angry and being serious because this is an angry and serious time we're in. It's not a time for jokes. There are literal kids in cages at this point. There's no time for joking on that stage. And I think as liberals or progressives or Democrats, if I saw a candidate joking around on stage about any of these very important issues at a time like this, I wouldn't take them seriously. It's not a time for being jovial. It's a time for being serious and talking about serious policy matters that are impacting real human lives at this point. Whether it's putting food on the table or putting money in our pocketbooks or making sure that our immigration policies actually work for people in this country. Those are the things that they should be talking about, and those are the things that they did talk about. And I will also say, I think it's incredibly important that people of color on the stage, whether it's Tulsi, whether it's Julian Castro, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, we're talking about things like immigration and about race, because we have to be talking about those issues in a very real way, and they have a responsibility to hold each other accountable. And I'm glad that Kamala went and held Joe Biden accountable for the things that he's done in his past. And I think that is how the Democratic Party will get the very best candidate to run against Trump. That's how that will happen, is by holding each other accountable.
I think that the...
real quick, because we're up against the wall, real quick, and then I've got a follow-up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that... I disagree about the humor. I'm not looking for Rodney Dangerfield or somebody else on stage. That is not what I'm talking about. But you can present things in a lighthearted way. You can be very serious about issues, but you can still try to elicit a sense, even a laugh, if it is at the right way at the right time. The fact that there is so much anger, I think, takes away from a lot of the humanness. Tulsi Gabbard did not come across with a lot of anger. Yang didn't come across with a lot of anger either, by the way. I just want to say, neither one of them really did. And they had their points that they wanted to make. They came across as fairly poised. Again, I'm not a big Yang fan either. But I mean, I still saw that they had a lighter side of themselves. They weren't as angry. And then that one gal, Williamson, who's on the one end there, I mean, this gal, I mean, she's out there, she's representing the hippie beatnik generation. Oh,
That's your old
it's peace and
generation.
love. Oh, I reject her. I reject her.
Okay, so with that, and you kind of transition to it. Good point, counterpoint. But who was the most presidential on the stage to you, just real quick?
I thought it was a toss-up between Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris.
All right, let's leave it there for this week. I appreciate you both coming in. We've
you.
got another debate coming up in about a month, I think. Number 2
Yes.
on CNN.
Yep.
We'll be talking about that as well.
Awesome, thank you.
All right.
All right.